Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk to Michael Rowever, who is the executive from GS1 in Australia and is taking care of a project that must be very important or more important than the discovery of the containers or the introduction of the containers in the logistics system in the world. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Very good, Edson. Thank you very much. And as far as more important, maybe not, but it's certainly a significant development that's going to improve efficiency across the freight transport process.
And what is that, Michael? What is real involved in this project?
Well, so Scan4Transport started off as a global working group. So back in 2019, where logistics service providers and shippers, they all got together and they said, look, we've got huge amounts of challenges in the freight transport process around efficiency and interoperability and visibility. And they wanted to address those challenges. And a lot of these companies have been using GS1 standards, so supply chain standards, for many years. You know, they've been around since the 70s, and they started because retailers were looking to, again, gain efficiencies and interoperability, and they were looking to introduce a barcode so that they can scan items through their checkout. And what they quite quickly discovered is that, well, if you're going to use a barcode, and you've got different retailers, you can't have every retailer using a different type of barcode, right? And that barcode itself, it has information in it, like an identifier of that product. You can't have everyone making up that identifier. And that's why Scan4Transport came about, because it was about, well, agreeing upon a standard barcode, agreeing upon the data that goes into it, so that not everyone makes up the license plate, because if everyone makes up the license plate, you're going to have 100 bits of freight going around with Michael on it, right? Yeah. So that's why Scan4Transport came about, and it's all about encoding that minimum data that any party along that supply chain needs to be able to move that freight from A to B. So things like, where's the freight going? The address, contact details. How does this freight need to be handled? Is it dangerous goods? Does it need to be delivered by a particular day? And if you're going to put a date in there, well, what's the format of the date, right? Because the freight could come from anywhere, right? Are we going to follow the month, day, year format, or are we going to do day, month, year, right? We can't have that confusion in the supply chain, and that's why the standards came about.
And the idea is to unify the way people can offer and read information from goods.
Yeah, very much so. So if we talk about Australia as a starting point, so Australia is about the size of Europe, and we have 40,000, so 40,000 transport companies to move freight. And you might, as a shipper, have one transport company that picks up from you, and they might, like a taxi, deliver that freight directly to the door of someone in your local area. However, what you may not realize is that if that freight is maybe going, into another suburb, into the country, right, another transport provider needs to get involved, right? So that freight then gets dropped off at a depot and another truck comes along and picks that freight up. Or if it goes international, it might be yet another company. And because of all that diversity, and the fact that some companies specialize in parcels and other ones specialize in pallets or dangerous freight or what we call ugly freight, because the freight's not a standard pretty box. That's why there's 40,000 companies here in Australia. And when we talk about other countries around the world, I know in Italy there's 100,000, and literally there's millions of companies around the world that move freight, and all got their own formats.
Yes, the comparison I was doing is because when people started using containers, it was easier to arrive in a port anywhere in the world and stop your ship, and then people can take the container from one place to another, because the trucks they talk to the ships, because they are carrying the same kind of boxes. And I think this is the next step, because we are doing the same thing with data and information during the process of logistics is very important. And
Ex-
yes,
exactly. I was going to say,
yeah,
yeah, if everyone puts the no matter what they're shipping into a same size box, it makes it
yeah,
easier to move the box. So if everyone puts the information about the freight that needs to move in that same square box, that square barcode, that 2D barcode, then it
yeah.
makes it easier to move that information.
And you said Correios. Correios is our postal company here in Brazil, and also other countries are involved in this project and in this tests. Sorry, are you? Can you tell some about these countries and the other companies you are having within this project?
Yeah, very much so. So Brazil Post was involved in the development of the standards, and the standards themselves in early 2021 were piloted around the world in all the continents. So we had participants from here in Australia and New Zealand. So companies like Australia Post and DHL, which I'm sure know those, and Victaz Freight, but then also we had participants from over in the US, pallet companies involved, and over in Europe, and it was all about just ensuring that the standards that were developed, did they contain that minimum data that everybody in the supply chain needed to move that freight along. And even the pallet example was really fascinating, because there's this real challenge that when you're moving a pallet from one party to another party, you need to record that transfer of ownership. And so Scan4Transport could even facilitate to make that process easier. And so I'm hoping that you're able to share with everyone. There's some great little videos and so some links that I can share with you that talk about those pilots, and the pilot participants talk about the benefits that they experienced. And some of those pilot participants are already live today with the standards. So it's very much now about industry coming together and starting to roll those standards out.
As far as I can understand about this, I'm not a logistics specialist, but I think the idea is to use any kind of technology, kind of like RFID or QR codes or data matrix, or I think, or barcodes. You can read information from any source. Is that right? Or are you using all these technologies? Can be used?
Yeah. So the real objective was to ensure that the technologies that are used today can still continue to be used. Now, again, if I use the analogy, you'll have a bit of software that maybe enables you to create a label or to create a shipment so that you can send freight. And when you install that bit of technology, one of the first steps that the software does is it says, what language would you like to speak, for a better term, so that when you read the information on the screen, you can understand what it's asking you to do, and you can give it instructions in a language that you understand. Well, in addition to doing that, what we're now doing is we're adding another little box that you can select to say that, we're not going to create a barcode. I'm going to create it in the Scan4Transport format, that language, so that everybody along the supply chain, when they select that in their software, they can select their language and that standard format for reading or creating the information in the barcode. And no one has to really change what they're doing today. You don't have to buy all new software. You can continue to use your existing software. It's just about adding or changing that language in that software. You're still using the internet. You're still using barcode scanners or RFID scanners. In this particular case, it's about the way that the data is encoded.
Okay. And Michael, is there something you want to say that I did not ask, or some information you would like to share?
Yeah, look, it's really, the standards are there. So prior to Scan4Transport, there was no common language. So it's really up to industry now to think about it. So next time that you're setting up a new relationship with a logistics service provider, a company, right? When the question get asked, well, how do we want to create the barcode? We'll say, well, let's not reinvent the wheel, right? Let's not make up our own format, our own license plates. Let's use a global standard. Let's use GS1. And that makes it easier that next time around that you start establishing a relationship with another logistics service provider, or if you're a logistics service provider, you're establishing a relationship with another shipper, right? You can say, well, let's select Scan4Transport. And they go, oh, great, I already understand that language. And obviously it's going to create efficiency, it's going to create interoperability, it's going to create things like agility, right? Because anybody can scan that barcode, and even if they haven't had the electronic instructions yet telling them, oh, this is what I need you to do with this bit of freight, they can capture that information from the barcode. And the other thing that they could potentially do, and think of this as a bit like the RFID analogy, right? That barcode can actually contain a link back to a source system somewhere that might have the latest transport instructions, right? Or it can enable you to say, well, I've picked up the freight, and you can provide an update on the status on the freight. And again, this is not a system that we've generated. This is just a standard that all these companies can incorporate in their existing systems to create that efficiency, agility, interoperability.
I'm sure your project rocks. Yeah, with your guitars. Okay, yep. Michael. Yeah. And thank you very much for your interview. And this is huge. I think this project is special and very important. It will change a lot of things in a better way for lots of companies around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.